So, do we spend our money correctly? Which is a really fundamental question, because around the world we spend billions of dollars, euros, krona every year on developing leaders. And yet, in my view, we actually have a deficit of great leadership, both commercially, politically, all over the world. And I think that does come down to the fact that we're spending the money in the wrong places. So, first of all, we're trying to develop individual leaders. And I don't think the challenge for most organizations or societies is about leaders. It's about leadership teams. And again, I'm very clear in what I'm saying there. Not teams of leaders, but leadership teams. So it's not trying to develop everybody to be perfect leaders. What we need are groups of people who work together, where some people have strengths, some people have weaknesses, but together they can be great leadership teams. Because to me, the challenge is not developing leaders. It's actually about making a difference to societies and organizations, and starting off by thinking, what is the question that leadership is the answer to, and developing leadership within that context. So I think this idea of just throwing money at developing generic leaders who are all the same is a waste of money. So the question is, should we be measuring the impact of leadership or measuring leadership development itself? And it's quite clear to us through the research and the organizations we work with, we need to be measuring the impact, the outcome that leadership is making, not measuring the leadership development process. And this actually comes down to one of the fallacies of leadership development, where an awful lot of the measurement are happy sheets. Did people enjoy the program, etc.? We're measuring the wrong thing. What we need to be measuring is when they've gone back to work, have they led in a better way that within that context has allowed that organization to be more successful? That is the only measure that really matters. So is there a gap between what we know about leadership and what we do? And I think the answer is absolutely. And I think this is the saddest piece of the research. All of the work we did with, and it was something like 50 organizations we brought together at Henley to do the research. There was nothing, like rocket science or anything amazing about it. But what was really sad was most of the organizations knew this stuff, but they were still investing money in a lot of stuff that wasn't truly developing leadership. And I think we get stuck in so many ways in this knowing-doing gap. We've got to become much more mindful. We've got to stand back. And I think we discuss whether HR is accountable or not for leadership development. Because I think a lot of leaders, they want HR to produce some quick, easy solution. So run a course for me, because you can measure that and it's easy. Whereas now we're saying they need to take accountability. They need to play an active role in it. So I think this is a huge challenge for organizations, is to close this gap. We know all these things. We need to become much more mindful in putting into practice what we really know to be best practice. So what principles could we put into practice to really narrow this knowing-doing gap? I think first of all, we've got to ground leadership development not as a solution looking for problems, but we need to invest far more time as leadership development professionals in working, not telling, but working with the organization to help the organization understand the challenges that leadership is the answer to really, really ground leadership development in the context. And I think one of the principles, therefore, is HR, leadership development professionals need to spend much more time in the business, engaging with the business challenges, not in the classroom developing irrelevant programs, etc. I think the other gap is, therefore, it's all about measurement. We've got to make sure that we actually measure the people who are driving leadership development and the activity in terms of the difference it's making to the organization. Now, a lot of people say, Nick, that's really difficult, whereas a happy sheet is really easy. Well, I remember a famous quote from Homer Simpson. He once said, if it's difficult, it's not worth doing. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that this isn't difficult. If it was easy, we wouldn't have the problem we're facing. But we need to really focus our attention on where we can make the biggest difference, not just sit back and churn out endless irrelevant courses, putting people through them. And then we measure the success. Oh, look, we scored 4 points out of 5 on the happy sheet, and 98 of 100 people went on the course. So what?